You noticed it gradually, then all at once. The feeder was full. The water was there. The yard looked exactly the same as it always had. But the birds were gone. Not fewer, gone. You waited a day, then 3, then a week. You refilled the feeder. You changed the water. You stood at the window at the times they always came and watched an empty yard and couldn't figure out what had changed. Here is the truth. Nobody tells you. When birds stop coming to a feeder, suddenly and completely, it almost never happens randomly. There is almost always a single specific cause. And in the majority of cases, that cause is something the feeder owner is doing or has stopped doing without realizing it has any effect at all. Today, we're going to find it. Welcome back to The Birds Know. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you understand the birds that visit your yard and why they come back. In this video, we're going through the 8 most common single causes of a sudden complete drop in feeder visits, the specific triggers that send birds away, not gradually, but all at once. And for each one, we're going to tell you exactly how to know if this is what happened in your yard and exactly what to do about it. Stay until the end, because the last cause is the one that almost nobody thinks of, and the one that explains more sudden disappearances than any other single factor. Number 1. A predator has marked your yard as a hunting ground. This is the most common cause, and it is the one that operates most invisibly. Birds do not evaluate danger only in the moment of attack. They evaluate it continuously in advance, based on evidence that accumulates over days. A hawk that perched near your feeder once and then left has still left something behind, the memory of every bird that was present when it appeared. The research on this is unambiguous. Studies on prey dynamics in backyard bird populations have documented what researchers call a landscape of fear. Effect: the tendency of prey species to avoid areas where predator presence has been detected, even after the predator is no longer visible. A Cooper's hawk that visits your yard 3 times in a week, even if it doesn't make a successful strike, is enough to suppress feeder activity for days to weeks afterward. The birds have not gone far. They are in your neighborhood. They are simply avoiding the specific location where they registered a predator signal. The most common predators responsible for sudden feeder abandonment in American backyards are Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, both of which are specialist bird hunters, fast and maneuverable enough to hunt in suburban environments, and both of which have expanded their urban populations significantly in recent decades. Outdoor cats are the second most common cause in this category and the most underestimated. A cat that patrols near a feeder, even intermittently not attacking, simply passing through, can suppress bird activity completely. The scent of a cat, detectable to birds at distances humans cannot perceive, registers as a persistent predator signal even when the cat is not present. If your birds disappeared suddenly, look for a hawk perched in a tree near the feeder. Check the ground below the feeder for feathers, a sign of a successful strike. Ask yourself whether a neighbor's cat has begun appearing in your yard. The birds will come back, but they will come back on their own timeline, when their collective risk assessment determines the area is safe again. The best thing you can do is keep the feeder full and wait. Number 2. Something in the yard changed, and the birds haven't updated their map yet. Birds are creatures of habit and spatial consistency. They learn the layout of a feeding area with extraordinary precision. The approach routes, the escape routes, the cover nearby, the sight lines for predators. When something in that physical environment changes, suddenly the bird's map of the area no longer matches reality. And a bird whose map doesn't match reality is a bird that doesn't feel safe. The changes that most commonly trigger feeder abandonment are ones that seem minor or unrelated to the feeder itself. A large shrub trimmed or removed near the feeder eliminates an escape route the birds have been relying on. A new piece of garden furniture placed nearby changes the sight lines. A garden ornament added close to the feeder introduces an unfamiliar object that hasn't been assessed yet. A wind chime installed directly beside the feeder adds unpredictable sound and movement to what was a predictable, safe space. None of these things are dangerous, but birds don't know that yet, and a bird's default response to an unassessed change in a feeding area is to stop visiting until the change has been observed long enough to be categorized as safe. This evaluation period typically lasts 3 to 14 days, depending on the species and the magnitude of the change. Chickadees and house finches tend to return to altered environments faster than cardinals, which are among the most cautious of common backyard species. If your birds disappeared after you made any change to the yard, however small and seemingly unrelated, wait. The feeder doesn't need to be moved. The change doesn't need to be reversed. The birds just need time to assess the new reality and update their map. Number 3. Natural food is abundant, and the feeder is no longer the best option. This is the cause that most people never consider, and it is one of the most common. Birds don't visit feeders because feeders are their preferred food source. They visit feeders because feeders are a reliable and convenient supplement to natural food. When natural food becomes abundant enough, the feeder becomes redundant, and visits drop sharply. The two peak periods of natural food abundance in most of North America are late spring through early summer, when insects are at their highest density and wild berries and fruits begin to ripen, and early autumn, when seeds and berries are at their maximum abundance before winter depletes them. During these periods, it is completely normal for feeder activity to drop by 50, 70, even 90% compared to winter levels. This is not a problem. It is not a failure. It is the birds doing exactly what they should, taking advantage of the most nutritious and varied food available during the period when it exists. The birds have not gone. They are in your yard and your neighborhood, foraging on the insects, berries, and seeds that a productive summer landscape provides. They will return to the feeder when natural food becomes scarcer, typically in late autumn, and with full force by November and December. If your birds disappear in May, June, July, or September, and the feeder is otherwise clean and correctly stocked, this is almost certainly the explanation. Keep the feeder filled at a reduced level. Some individuals will continue to visit, and when the season turns, they will all be back. Number 4. The seed has gone bad, and the birds know it before you do. Birds have a sense of smell that is more capable than most people realize, particularly when it comes to detecting the chemical changes associated with spoiled seed. Research on avian olfaction has documented that many common backyard species can detect rancid fat and mold-producing microbes at concentrations well below the threshold of human perception. In practical terms, your seed can go bad before it shows any visible sign of deterioration. The birds will know before you do. Seed that has been exposed to moisture, either through rain getting into the feeder, condensation in a poorly sealed storage container, or humid weather, begins a chemical process of oxidation and microbial growth that produces compounds the birds will not eat. The seed may look exactly the same. It may smell only faintly off to a human, but to a bird, it smells wrong, and a feeder that smells wrong is a feeder they will not visit. The specific conditions that most commonly lead to undetected seed spoilage are seed stored in a garage or shed through a warm, humid summer, seed in a feeder without adequate drainage holes that has gotten wet from rain, and seed that has been in the feeder for more than 2 weeks during warm weather without being replaced. The fix is straightforward. Empty the feeder completely. Discard all existing seed. Wash the feeder thoroughly. Allow it to dry completely and refill with fresh seed from a newly opened bag. In most cases, birds will begin returning within 24 to 48 hours of a feeder refresh. Number 5. A dominant species has taken over the feeder. Sometimes, the birds haven't left the yard. They've simply been displaced from the feeder by a more dominant species. And without a feeder, they can safely access, they stop appearing at the familiar location. The most common feeder takeover species in American backyards are European starlings, house sparrows, and brown-headed cowbirds, all of which are aggressive, highly social, and capable of descending on a feeder in numbers that exclude smaller and more cautious species entirely. A flock of 20 starlings at a platform feeder will consume an entire feeder's worth of seed in under an hour and will actively displace every other species through sheer numbers and aggressive behavior. The cardinals, chickadees, and finches that previously used that feeder don't leave the neighborhood. They simply stop attempting to use a resource that has become inaccessible. Blue jays, while native and ecologically valuable, can have the same effect on smaller species when they arrive in numbers. A group of jays working a feeder will keep chickadees and finches at bay for hours. The solution here is feeder design rather than feeder location. Caged feeders, feeders enclosed in a wire cage with openings large enough for small birds, but too small for starlings and jays, allow the smaller species back in while excluding the larger dominant ones. Safflower seed, disliked by most starlings and house sparrows, can shift the species composition at a platform feeder significantly, and multiple feeders placed in different areas of the yard prevent any single flock from controlling all available food. Number 6. A single frightening event has associated the feeder with danger. Sometimes the cause of a sudden disappearance is a single event, loud, sudden, and alarming enough to associate the feeder area with danger in the bird's memory. Fireworks. A dog that got loose and chased the birds. A child who ran toward the feeder and caused a mass flush. A car that backfired directly outside the yard. A window strike. A bird flying into glass near the feeder that other birds witnessed. These events, when they occur near a feeder, can suppress activity for days to weeks. The mechanism is the same as the predator response. The feeder location has been associated with a fear event, and the bird's risk assessment keeps them away until enough time and calm observation has accumulated to reassess the location as safe. Interestingly, window strikes, which kill an estimated 600 million birds in the United States every year, are particularly effective at suppressing feeder activity because other birds witness the strike and register the location as dangerous. Feeders placed very close to windows, intended to give the owner a good view, can inadvertently create a cycle of strikes and subsequent abandonment. If your feeder is very close to a window and activity has dropped, consider whether a strike may have occurred. Moving the feeder to either less than 3 feet from the window, close enough that a striking bird cannot build enough speed to be seriously injured, or more than 30 feet away, where birds have time to recognize the glass, can resolve both the strike problem and the associated abandonment. Number 7. The birds that were using your feeder have migrated. This one requires understanding that the birds at your feeder in different seasons are not always the same individuals, or even the same species. Many of the birds that visit American backyard feeders are migratory or partially migratory, and the composition of your feeder community changes significantly across the year. A sudden drop in activity in early spring may simply reflect the departure of your winter residents. Dark-eyed juncos, white-throated sparrows, American tree sparrows, who have left for more northern breeding grounds. A drop in late summer may reflect the early departure of species heading south. The confusion arises because the timing of these departures can be sudden. A weather system moving through can trigger migration in species that have been present all winter and within 48 hours, they are gone. The feeder that was busy yesterday is quiet today. Not because anything is wrong, but because the birds that were using it are now somewhere over Pennsylvania heading north. Understanding the seasonal composition of your feeder community, which birds are your residents and which are seasonal visitors, helps distinguish a normal migratory departure from a problem that needs addressing. If your feeder was busy all winter and went quiet in March or April, the juncos and sparrows have almost certainly left for the season. The resident species, cardinals, chickadees, nuthatches, woodpeckers, will still be there, but in fewer numbers and with less urgency now that winter survival pressure has lifted. Number 8. You changed your routine, and the birds noticed. I saved this one for last because it is the least obvious cause and the one that reveals the most about the nature of the relationship between birds and the people who feed them. Birds that have been visiting a feeder consistently over weeks and months do not simply track the feeder. They track the person associated with the feeder. They know your schedule. They know when you come outside. They know which window you watch from. They have built your routine into their daily pattern. Your appearance in the yard signals safety and resource availability in a way that the feeder alone does not. When that routine changes, when you travel for a week, when your schedule shifts and you stop going outside at the same time, when you stop coming to the window at the hour they've come to expect you, something shifts in their assessment of the yard. Research on human-bird habituation has documented that birds in yards with a consistent human presence develop a lower baseline stress response in that yard than birds in yards where humans appear unpredictably. The consistent human is not just a food provider. They are a safety signal. Their regular, predictable presence tells the birds that this space is monitored, familiar, and low risk. When the consistent human disappears from the routine, the yard loses that safety signal. The birds don't leave permanently, but their visit frequency drops. Their wariness increases. They treat the yard more like an unfamiliar space than the established, safe territory it was. If you traveled for a week and came back to a quiet feeder, even a full one, this is likely what happened. The good news is that reestablishing the routine reestablishes the signal. Go outside at your usual time. Fill the feeder consistently. Sit in the yard when you can. Within a week or two, the bird's assessment will update. They didn't forget you. They just needed to see you again. Has your feeder ever gone suddenly quiet and you couldn't figure out why? Did you eventually find the cause? Or did the birds just come back without explanation? Tell me in the comments, because the stories people share about these moments are always the ones that reveal the most about what is actually happening in their yards. I'll see you in the next one.